Any kind of construction project is complex, and no matter the size, there are risks to cost and deadline overruns. IT-focused projects are no exception. I saw a couple of stats that were quite alarming. So the Harvard Business Review stated that at least 1 in 6 IT projects turn into Black Swan events with cost overruns of over 200%. A PwC study published in Forbes stated that there were an estimated 50 to 150 billion in lost revenue from failed IT projects. So as I researched this topic, I decided to turn to Rick Stuart, who is Vice President, Security Solutions, Technology Center of Excellence with Vision Technologies. Rick shared with me some of the common pitfalls that cause a project to go off the rails, and then shares some ideas on how to avoid these on your next IT or low voltage project. We even talk on one of my favorite topics, company culture. Rick has over 25 years in the security operations, spanning from surveillance systems, security needs assessments, project management, sales leadership, IT network design, and emergency management. He currently spearheads daily operations for Vision's growing security integration business. Rick is also a commercial multi-engine instrument pilot, an airframe and power plant mechanic, and an officer in the USAF Auxiliary. Welcome to Keeping the Lights On. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and on this podcast, I connect with the owners and pros who design, build, and maintain our electrical, communications, and industrial world to explore the best ways forward. Let's get into the show.
We start out each episode with the meals that bring us together. So, Rick, if I were to visit you, where might you take me and why would you choose this?
Yeah, so probably Kentmore Airport on Kent Island. I like destinations where you can walk to good food, and so that's certainly one of them. You walk 2 blocks down to the Marina restaurant, and nice atmosphere, kind of a beach vibe there. They've got little tiki bar out on the beach if you like to eat on the beach, or they've got, on the deck watching the boats come into the marina, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, so what's your, you have a favorite meal you like to get there?
Well, being a Marylander, crab cakes is always high on the list, but at that place in particular, sometimes it's whatever they're bringing in right off the boat, they're fixing fresh there. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you don't get a whole lot of that out here in St. Louis, that fresh fish.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask, Rick, so I do a little research on the restaurant when, in our pre-conversation, and it looked like a really cool place. You got some great photos, and like you said, the marina is right there. So, what, do you take your boat to Kentmore, or how do you get to Kentmore?
You can take your boat, but I fly in. There's a grass airstrip there,
Nice.
Like I said, 2 blocks from the restaurant. So.
Oh, wow. What, how long a flight is it from your home base?
Yeah, so if I'm up at Carroll County Airport in Maryland here, it's about a 35 minute flight.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of plane do you fly?
It's a Piper Light Twin. It's an Apache.
Okay.
Yeah.
One element of any project today includes building out a low voltage elements, IT, AV security, and all that. So, and this part of the project isn't immune to costs and deadline overruns, like I mentioned in my intro. So, what are some of the biggest challenges to completing a low voltage portion on time and either on or under budget?
Yeah, so we obviously cover a lot more than just one technology. And so, and if you look at the marketplace, there's a lot of integrated technology onto the network. The trend back in the 2000s was everything converging onto the network. And so as we were forming what we do here, we formed groups that focus on specific technologies, but then we collaborate on an overall low voltage integrated design. So when you work with a lot of different stakeholders, sometimes on a project, it's hard to have that coordination and collaboration. So for instance, regular meetings to communicate between the various technologies and understand what their priorities are, and then bringing in maybe a design team too late in the process So if you're an end user and you explain what you're looking for to a consultant or an A&E firm, and then they go, you engage a general contractor, and then all of a sudden now, hey, I need to find a security integrator or an AV integrator or something like that. And often there's, bringing somebody in late to the game like that, it raises a lot of complications, maybe delays, maybe your budget estimates from your contractor turn out not to be accurate at that point, things like that. And so we try to become part of the team early on to kind of eliminate those problems.
One of the challenges you shared kind of centered around like having to deal with different people and stakeholders, and maybe not always having a clear understanding of the purpose and mission of the project, as I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. Can you give an example of a project where this kind of was manifested, where the purpose of the space maybe not was completely understood?
Yeah. So I can think of one off that we were talking about a distribution center, and you have end user, they have a certain workflow. They describe what they need, again, to an A&E firm. And in this case, they also were working with a robotics company to automate their picking and shipping processes. And so the robotics company had a requirement for Wi-Fi access points for their robots. And then the A&E translates that into a design on paper to somebody like Vision that deploys the access points and the cabling plant for them. But what was not communicated is that it's not standard Wi-Fi. They don't just need access to the network. They actually use the precise location of the access points for navigating through the shelves and to where they're going to pick the product and that type of thing. So as a result, the drawings didn't clearly indicate that, and there was no notes on it or anything like that. So we went and started deploying the access points like we would normally deploy a Wi-Fi system, and didn't find out until partially into the project that wasn't the case, that they needed very precise location. And so now there's a problem. You've deployed over 100 WAPs in this area, and there's a schedule that you've got to meet and a deadline. And so we wound up having to work with all those parties, actually figure out what the true design purpose was, and then work 3 shifts to catch up to the schedule so the customer could get the building cut over on time.
Do you try to get in as early as you can in the design and discussion process and kind of introducing your communication plans and all that?
We do, and we actually have a trademarked methodology called integrated technology delivery that we follow. And again, we try to become partners early with the end user, the contractor, the consultant, or A&E, and sometimes kind of herd the cats or shepherd that team, in making sure. But when we do that, and it's a lot of times it's a paid design process we get involved with. We don't supplant the architectural and engineering firm, but what we do bring is a lot of expertise in the technologies that we're deploying.
Okay.
So, what we do is we are able to show customers that it actually costs less in the long run in terms of if we're able to coordinate all those things up front, the customer gets something that's closer to their original ask, and they get it on schedule and on budget, without getting a bunch of change orders along the way because they realize, oh, this is not what I thought I was getting, or that type of thing. So.
Okay. One thing I'm kind of curious about when we're talking about these processes and all that, where does like quality control, like how does that manifest in real life for you all?
Yeah, so we do have a in-process quality control methodology that we follow.
Yeah.
And usually the project manager is involved in that, as kind of the person that's the lead on that. And what it is specific steps along the process of delivering the project that we have seen as a company. If we do these things, these milestones, that the project is generally successful. And if we miss one or more of them, the project generally goes off the rails, right?
Right.
So it's not a process where we're putting this thing like all our employees need to go in and check a box because we want compliance, right? It's because we know that as a team, we're going to be successful historically if we follow these steps.
Right. I suddenly thought you said checklist or something, but I suddenly thought of piloting that we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
and checklists are crucial to flying. Start using it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. No matter how many times you've done it, you always don't trust yourself. You trust the checklist, right? And you follow the same process each time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to step back a second. You brought this word up, and I think I even used it at some point. When you talk about a project or design that it should be more integrated, or integrated design or integrated project, what do you mean by that? How do you define integrated in your world?
Yeah, so in our world, I'm talking about everything from the cable plant to the switch stack that builds out the network to all of the edge devices, the IoT in today's vernacular. So whether that's cameras or monitors in a conference room or my badge reader at the front door, any of the things that are going to touch the network, all of them have different bandwidth requirements, different connectivity. Some may be wired, some may be wireless. They also have different power requirements. So, making sure that we put the correct switches on the network that can both provide the bandwidth and the power that the IoT devices are going to need. And since we're generally covering all of the low voltage scopes, we're designing that as a whole package. And there are efficiencies that come with that. For instance, when you're cabling, having common pathways, and making sure that you're thinking of that up front, and you're not building a separate network for different technologies that are out there.
Okay. How do you tie this kind of integration thinking into how you serve your customers?
So again, we're coming at it from listening to the customers, things like what are your biggest pain points? If they've had current technology, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And then, more recently, we're moving from, the company traditionally has been structured around the various technologies like security or AV or networking, and we're moving more towards a vertical strategy. So we're developing expertise in-house in various, commercial or public sector or healthcare or education verticals. So to learn, because people in those verticals typically have some common, requirements, common compliance things they have to meet, common business problems that, and what we do, I think, very well is look at complex problems and find solutions that are easy for the customer to implement and maintain.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a project where, and I think you called it ITD, integrated technology delivery? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you maybe give me an example of where ITD came into play?
Yeah. So we have a large healthcare system in the Mid-Atlantic that leans on us heavily for various low voltage technologies. And they were building a new surgery center at one of their hospital campuses. And initially, they hired an A&E firm and kind of took the traditional approach. And then they eventually selected a general contractor. But as we were consulting with them, we talked to them about our methodology and what we could do for them. And they actually had us partner with the A&E firm and budgeted money. So the A&E firm hired us as a consultant. We then invested a lot in putting together an integrated low voltage design that included not just the things we've talked about, but like the network stack, the AV, the security, but also distributed antenna systems, DAS systems for both public safety and for cell phone users in the building. When doctors come into a hospital, they need to have their tablet or their iPad connect, so they can do their consultation with the customer thing with their patients rather. So that type of thing, even down to smart exit signs that would tell them when the light bulb needed to be replaced or a battery needed to be replaced. So integrating all of that and then designing a network architecture that would support it properly. And so what happened in the end is they actually pulled back the low voltage scope from the general contractor and awarded it to Vision directly, and then paid their GC a management fee to coordinate with us. But really cemented that end user relationship and helped us to have control for them on their behalf of making sure, again, that what their ask was at the beginning is what they got at the end, and it was on time and on budget.
I think one of the challenges with low voltage is that there's a continuous improvement of products and technology. So can you touch on the philosophy of training of the team there?
Yeah, so we invest quite a lot into our team, all the way from sales to our technicians that deploy in the field. And there's a number of ways we do that. We have tuition reimbursement program that teammates can take advantage of. We bring a lot of our channel partners in to do specific trainings, and we're actually a Bixby regional training center here. So we wind up training even some of our competitors for their basic Bixby certifications. We have hands-on labs in our building for that purpose. But we're also beginning to, I mentioned we're going more to a vertical market sector strategy. And so now we're beginning to cross-train our team for various things. So for instance, sometimes the technology between AV and security could be similar, hanging a VTC, video teleconferencing camera, versus hanging a security camera is not really all that different, right? So we can also gain some efficiencies by cross-training. And it's been a good thing for us because sometimes we have entry-level people come in the cabling side of things. And if they then want to learn a technology to advance their career, they have a lot of opportunities to cross-train and do that and become more valuable to Vision and the marketplace in general.
How involved are the installers, so the people actually doing the work there in the field? How much do they know about the overall project?
Yeah, so we do bring in foremen and supervisors. I mentioned we do a number of kickoffs along the process. So before the delivery team goes out, there's a kickoff both internally and with the customer. And so the internal stakeholders, the foremen, the supervisors, they participate in that kickoff. And then they have actually daily site meetings with the crew that's doing the work on the site for the day to make sure that is being communicated.
Okay.
What are not just that we're hanging a bunch of widgets out there, but what is the customer's overall vision and need out of this system? What are we trying to accomplish? For instance, on the security side, we're always talking about, we're not just hanging a camera or a card reader. We're actually protecting people's lives and property. That's our purpose for being here. And then it may have something to do with specific customers. I think of a hospital that we had in downtown Baltimore that back during the riots that happened there a few years ago. And, we did some upgrading and we were explaining to the team there, the why behind it.
Talk about cross-training and approaching jobs from a holistic manner. Can you touch on your role specifically and what the Technology Center of Excellence, what that plays at Vision Technologies and how it helps support how Vision approaches jobs and customers?
Yeah. So as we move from technology-centered practices to more, solutions-based vertical market sectors within our company, the TCOE, or Technology Center of Excellence, is a place where We have subject matter experts in all of those technologies. They're remaining engaged in the different trade organizations, in the different channel partners, that types of thing. And they're solution specialists. So they're really bridging the gap to make sure we don't lose a focus on the individual technologies and that we maintain that high level of certification and knowledge. So we need to be, make sure we stay competent in all of the technologies that we're using to build the solutions. And that's really a lot of the focus of the TCOE, but also, kind of sometimes bridging the gap between what sales understands from an end user to what estimating and engineering actually needs in order to put together an effective quote for the customer or that type of thing. So, again, we spend a lot of time listening to customers, end users, and making sure that what we're proposing really meets the needs and solves the problems that they're describing.
Rick, in my interactions with Vision Technologies team, so you and Virginia and others, it seems to me that the culture at Vision is pretty supportive of the employees and the company and kind of what you're doing. It seems pretty tied together, and company culture has always been something that's kind of been a side passion of mine. Can you maybe touch on how the culture of Vision Technologies supports, integrated technology delivery and kind of just what you're all doing?
Yeah, so traditionally we've had a very customer first focused culture. Mm-hmm. We have certain tenets like, that we always say yes and then figure out how to deliver it type of thing, or creating a memorable experience for our customers, those types of things. But coming through COVID and all, we also realized that, the teammate experience can be just as important. Mm-hmm. As the customer experience. And really, we are, at the end of the day, we're not a product company, we're a people company, right? So our people are our product, so to speak. And so part of it is that investing in our teammates that we talked about previously, whether it's training, certifications, or allowing them to pursue that degree that they didn't have a chance to previously. But we also have now a lot of simpler type of events, the chili cook-off, or and we introduced employee engagement groups as well. Like we have a women's group internally. We always have a charity focus each year that the employees vote on a charity we want to support for the year. And then a lot of the events we'll do, we're having a pie day where you get to pie a senior leader, and it supports charity, And so giving is a very important part of the culture, always has been here. And we were founded as a service disabled veteran owned small business, and supported a lot of veterans charities like Wounded Warrior along the way. But that type of culture, we give an extra 4 hours of PTO to employees to go out and volunteer for a charity of their choice. Those types of things. The company will often match donations to the charity that we're supporting as well. So those things are important. I mean, people and relationships. Even recently, we've had a return to the office campaign that we launched. And it's more than just we want people to be in the office, right? It's really that interaction that bonds people together and creates that team that we also want to present to our customers, right? So when we go out, we're very concerned that we don't have, for instance, a teammate on a site that's working on one particular technology say to a customer, well, I don't know about that. You'll have to go ask this other person over here. That comes back to that culture of always say yes and then figure it out. Or, one of the other things that I didn't mention is if a customer asks you a question, you own that response. You may not know the response, but you own making sure that the response gets back to the customer. So we do have I consider a very strong culture here. And one of the kind of the methods we can gauge that is we have a very high rate of employees returning to the company. So like a lot of companies, there's turnover when you've got 600 employees, there is some turnover there. And then everybody talks about during COVID, how a lot of people went out and made a change and all. But we have a very high rate of people actually, new hires that have worked for us previously and come back. So, so I think that is a comment on the culture too.
So I'm hearing a couple of things here. Like I said, company culture is something I really thought a lot about and read and did some interviews in the past on. And I'm really hearing some things here that are keying me in that there's some good stuff going on over there at Vision Technologies. I'm curious, how do you reiterate like the say yes to customers and some of the other, we'll call them tenets for lack of a better word, principles? Are those repeated often, like in meetings, or I'm just curious about that?
Yeah, they are. I mean, so we have maybe a little unique here, not completely, but we have co-presidents here, and there's a co-president's kind of newsletter that comes out regularly to all of the employees. We also, because we are dispersed around the country somewhat, we have a monthly town hall. And so often we'll talk about tenets of the culture on there, and talk up events and the charities we're supporting, things like that. So we do that, and we do it on Facebook Live and a couple different, there's a couple different ways that employees can engage on that town hall. And then we also, as part of our marketing department, we have a person that handles internal communications, so that we realize that if we're going to succeed as a company, we have to continue to change and evolve, and sometimes change can be painful, right? And so we do have very intentional internal messaging that reinforces. So if we have an event, the event is also an opportunity to reinforce some part of the culture as well.
Okay. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. So last question for you, Rick. I always like to, and this kind of is around the why, I always like to close it out with refocusing on the why of what we do. So Rick, what motivates you to do this day in and day out? What keeps you excited and passionate about what you do?
Yeah, so I consider myself a technologist, and I do, especially where we are today versus when I got into the industry 30 years ago, the technology is advancing at a faster and faster pace. And for instance, now artificial intelligence, right, is a big thing. 20 years ago, it was the IT convergence was a big thing. But so for me, continually learning about new technology, doing that. And then the other thing that really motivates me is relationships. We're very much focused on partnering with our end users. And so I love meeting new people, hearing about what makes them tick and what problems that they need to solve and that type of thing, and then being a part of that solution.
Great. Well, Rick, thank you so much for being here. It's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, that was my conversation with Rick Stuart, Vice President, Security Solutions, Technology Center of Excellence at Vision Technologies. You can connect with Rick and what he is working on by heading to the links in the show notes. What I took away from my conversation is the importance of approaching any low voltage work from a holistic perspective, and to work diligently toward creating a clear communication plan to keep everyone on the same page as to the final purpose and vision of the project. In addition, it was fun to talk company culture and how important it is to be intentional in designing a culture that supports your mission and your team. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast player. Of course, we're also on YouTube now, so if you want to consume your podcast that way, we'd love to see you there too. So thanks for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time.